Welcome to Heart Riffing, a podcast by way of the heart. Here we explore what it means to reconnect with your essence and live from a place of personal freedom. If you're interested in learning more about our courses, mentoring and workshops, feel free to visit wayoftheheart.com.au. We're so glad you're here and we hope you enjoy the episode.
Hi everyone, welcome back to episode 7, could you believe it? And we just thought that we would do probably what some people expect us to do, but we're going to do it a little bit differently, and that is we're going to talk about pain points, okay? And everyone says, you should identify the pain points so that people know why you're here. These pain points aren't so much really why we're here, but the work that we do at Way of the Heart does address these pain points. And we're going to do it a little bit differently because in my journey, because I'm a wisdom literature guy and I often like to look back across human history, I have kind of scanned back through lots of different wisdom traditions and lots of different books and stuff. And I found Lao Tzu, or Lao Tzu, lots of people say his name differently. Lao Tzu, if you're Alan Watts. Lao Tzu, if you're me. That's the Australian pronunciation. And I found in particular a book that he wrote called the Tao Te Ching, which introduced me to a whole body of people, Lao Tzu, Zhuangzi, Confucius, not so much, but a book called the Wengzu. These are all great names. But it's basically the classic Chinese philosophical period of time. And it was really interesting because the pain points that they were dealing with, or the Daoist response to their culture at the time, was really about a kind of a central issue that was addressing the Daoists at that particular period of time, the tribal wars of China. And I think that we are in a very similar situation, not so much in the fact that there's tribal wars, but there was a fundamental fracture between people and nature. That was that if you could say, what was Taoism a response to? The biggest response it was this idea that human beings were constructing whole ways of being that actually had no connection to nature. And so the whole construct of society became very non-organic, non-natural, and people people creating something that in reality had nothing to do with who they are. Now that kind of sounds, for me, when I stumbled on that, I kind of went, oh, this is speaking to me, because for many of us, we're living in a way where we are fundamentally disconnected from ourselves. That's a really unnatural way to live. And when we are disconnected from ourselves, we create this whole artificial world that we live in that takes so much energy to prop up. And what Way of the Heart is at its core, and what Taoism at its core was a return to the essential nature of things. So in our language, it's a return to living from your heart, which is a return to your essence. In their language, it was moving from a contrived life back to looking at nature and looking at what living a natural, organic life was. So I think we're dealing with the same kind of fracture.
Okay.
So we're a little bit out there. I'm taking us a little bit out there. We're not saying that your pain point is, hyperachievement or burnout or, any of the 50,000 things, or, you haven't got to the top of the hill and you're not the best. It's like, get a grip, you'll be all right. So we're not dealing with any of that.
It's so hard to be so amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's my pain point.
Yeah.
Cool. So
how do I level up?
Speaking of pain points, so I've got 10 pain points here. 10
pain points.
That's it.
So this could be more than one. I mean, depending on how good this conversation goes, it could be one podcast or a couple of podcasts. We'll see how we go.
We'll see.
It won't be 10, I promise you.
Yeah, I promise you.
Yeah,
It will not be 10. Okay, so the first one. Humans lost their naturalness.
Yeah.
Do you want me to read the blurb below
Oh,
that?
sure. Read the blurb.
Taoism emerged because people drifted away from their own nature and began living artificially. Way of the Heart addresses the same wound by restoring people to the truth of their essence.
Yeah. So I think, I'm just going to riff off that and we can see where we go. But I think that that's true. I think so many of us just feel like we're doing stuff. Like everyone's busy. It's almost like who's got more emails unanswered in their inbox,
Yeah.
I got so many messages. I'm just so busy. It's like I don't care.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And not to be arrogant about that, some people are really busy, but the point is so many of us are living in a world that is so ridiculously unnatural, I think of the old farmers, we got family that are farmers and they get up when the sun comes up and they work all day and they work in the land, and then sun starts to go down and they come inside, they have a feed, they probably don't watch telly, they go to bed because they're tired, and there's this kind of natural rhythm to things, and it's all driven by the seasons. It's driven by the impact of the seasons upon the land. It's driven by the needs of the land. If there's a flood, then we've got to do fencing. If animals are calving, then we got to go and separate the weaners or whatever it is. And then you look at so much modern life, and it's not a natural rhythm. People are employed for an 8-hour day and then they're expected to stay longer.
Yeah.
People are, Australia has just brought in laws about not being able to contact employees outside of work hours unless there's some sort of workplace agreement. We've had the Australian government leaning into issues like psychologically safe workplaces because the workplace isn't a safe place for a lot of people.
This idea of naturalness is really interesting because it's two things, right? I think that we've lost connection with nature, as in the natural flow of things. Yeah. And then you can also look at naturalness as the flow or the movement of your essence in an organic, indigenous way. And with the first one, losing touch with nature, this is a conversation that Ted and I have all the time about how nature has seasons. You've got the spring where everything's blossoming and growing and blooming, and then you've got summer, and that's like a time of abundance, and you've got the harvest in autumn, and then you have this long winter period of rest. But with humans, it's push, 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 pump out the work, 365 days, minus a couple of weeks for holiday, which is completely, has no kind of respect for the natural rhythms of work and rest and play and all that sort of stuff. And we talk all the time about, or this is something that Ted says all the time, we've intellectualized nature through observing it in a scientific way. And in doing so, we've taken ourselves out of it, not realizing that we are actually nature as well.
Yeah. I think that's really part of the modern, I think that's part of the modern scientific hubris, is that we, scientism at its worst observes something supposedly objectively, but doesn't necessarily acknowledge the subjectivity of the observer, and doesn't believe that the observer is part of the whole experiment, right? And so, you're exactly right. So we look at things very forensically, and we do it to nature. And in a commodified world, we separate ourselves from nature. And you'd have to say through the Industrial Revolution, we treated the natural world as just a resource to be consumed.
Totally.
So we consumed our fisheries, we consumed our forests. And now if you look at the digital age, I don't know that the digital age has made our lives simpler. I mean, that was always the promise of the computer, was going to make our life simpler. The digital age has just meant that we're on all the time. We can be accessed all the time. Even if you don't want to be, your phone's still going to bleep up with the fact that you just got another email, or so-and-so just sent you a text, or someone from the other side of the world can now just come into your living room, I remember when you kids were
I was
little.
gonna say, I remember being a kid.
Yeah, I mean, the argument for me about, mobile phones when you were a kid was, I just want to access who's coming into my house.
Mm-hmm.
Because as soon as you gave your kid, an electronic device, the fact is any of their friends could show up anytime.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, you, you could go to bed, you could put the kids to bed, and if they had a phone or an iPad, the fact is you could go in there 2 hours later and they could be talking to their best friend. You know what I mean? So it wasn't the tyranny of that, but it was, as in, I wasn't necessarily scared that, there was predators in the room with my kids. What I was scared of is that there's no natural rhythm.
Yeah.
That you put a kid to bed, they're not going to bed because there's this thing that can just keep them switched on.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's kind of scary. I think that's kind of scary. And so I don't think the digital age did anything to make our lives simpler or more organic or more natural or flow with a more natural rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, it just someone could argue and say, oh, well, we find a rhythm with the new inventions. I'm not sure that we do. I'm not sure there's any evidence of that. I agree with you and Ted that nature has its rhythms and its patterns and its flow, and we live largely independent of that unless we're consuming it, And so I think Way of the Heart, in terms of pulling you back to who you really are, pulling you back to live from the core of your being, I think is a plea, just like Taoism was a plea. Hey, we've got to get back to something grounded here. I love going out with Bloss because a lot of the times, we'll be out and about, and then she would go, I just got to ground myself. And she takes her shoes off because there might be a patch of grass or dirt or something. Just walks around. Or I remember being overseas in Europe recently with Bloss, and we went into one little, there's cobblestones everywhere. We walk into one square and there's this massive tree, and a Bloss just goes up and goes, I got to give you, she's a tree hugger, what I mean? But
it must be hereditary. I do it too.
She goes, here's a living part of nature.
Yeah.
It's not a cobblestone. It's like, hello. So I think we're trying to address that same issue in our own unique way. And I don't know that that's an issue that many people even recognize. My life has no rhythm. It has no flow. It has no patterns.
I think, and it's really important to becoming aware of that, because I think that becoming aware of what that is and the cause of that sense of dis-ease, because I think that we get into the rhythm of stuff and we walk around, and then at some point you feel misaligned, or you feel anxious, or you feel burnt out or exhausted or whatever it is, and you go, oh, maybe it's XYZ, maybe it's because of this, I need to identify it so I can solve it. That's like, you might just be living in a way that's not natural, that's not aligned with your essence, that's not aligned with the ebb and flow of nature.
The one thing that I heard a lot when I was working in corporate is that I would go into rooms and people would be super stressed, and you'd go up to them and they go, love to chat, I've just got to pump this shit out.
Yeah.
And I just thought, what an astonishing, how astonishingly accurate. I have to pump this shit out. It's like, it's not even vital.
Yeah.
It could be a report that like the report is due, but that the person that you're giving the report to probably isn't going to invest much time reading it because they're super busy. So they're just going to skim the main points or look at the intro and the synopsis. And so, it's like, it's astonishingly disconnected from the genuine value of living in a true rhythm.
I always felt the same when I was in teaching. I'd be assigning students assessments that they didn't want to do to, tick off boxes on a curriculum that someone completely separate had created as a tick box. And I didn't want to grade the assessments. And I was just like, what are we actually doing here?
What crazy system is this?
Yeah, totally.
I imagine you can find a million of these. You know what I mean? I did it when I lectured at college, and I would have 300 students, and they would have sat for an exam, and each person might have had 13 pages in their exam for a 3-hour exam, and then I had to mark them over my holidays.
Fun.
It's like, who can read thousands of pages?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
like I had a marking rubrics with just, like if they mentioned this, if I can see this word, this word, this word, this word, if they've got that in a sentence, there's 2 or 3, or I certainly wasn't engaged in genuinely evaluating their competency or genuinely seeing whether they were across the stuff. It was completely artificial.
And
it was fake.
And this digs a little bit deeper into the consequences of this pain point, right? Like when you're not living in a way that's natural, everything that you're doing and touching becomes shallow and tokenistic, which
Completely
disconnects you further.
Yeah, completely. Because then the value is placed on the speed and the number of transactions that you can do, even if you're transacting something that has no substance.
Yeah.
That's our consumer market. We go and buy stuff that isn't going to last, but we get addicted to the transaction, not the substance of the thing we're transacting. That would be that would be at the core of that kind of idea. And I think the cry, or the thing that we're saying, is there has to be something of substance in the transaction. Like the transaction on its own is just that. It's just a transaction. There has to be substance and meaning and essence.
Yeah.
We have to turn up for these transactions in real ways. And the fact that we have to find ways to not show up a lot of the time, or the fact is we're involved in situations which actually thrive on the fact that you won't show up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
The corporate kind of, town hall where the leader stands up the front and no one actually listens. You know what I mean? It's like, or even say the news cycle where I'm just going to listen to the news, and it's just soundbite, 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 soundbite. It's okay. You listen to the news and there was nothing there to listen to in reality. Okay.
So if the pain point is people are not living natural anymore, and the invitation at the core of that is to show up with substance and show up with genuinity.
Yeah, well, I think the pain point is that there's a schism between the actual natural world that we're living in, the real world, call it that, and this artificial thing that we've constructed. And we spend an enormous amount of time keeping this thing alive, when in reality it's probably unsustainable. Whereas this is a self-sustaining reality that we basically are disconnected from. That's a. I told you it was going to be abstract, but I think it's true. I think that's genuine.
Yeah. So then, how do you address that?
I think the way the heart addresses that by getting you to be grounded in your own being, in your own personhood. I'm not going to say that we are the cure-all for all of that, but the fact is, if you're going to come home anyway, you may as well come home to yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And through so many of the activities in Way of the Heart are about, one of the best ways to come home for yourself is to reconnect to your environment in a genuine way.
Nice.
Go and spend time in nature. Go and just stop, meditate, read, all those sorts of things.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, sweet. Pain point number 2.
2.
People became over-contrived. Daoists saw humans forcing life, controlling, striving, performing. Way of the Heart speaks directly to this exhaustion and returns people to unforced alignment. So the pain point is people becoming over-contrived. Yeah. What is it to be over-contrived?
So contrivance isn't, we're using a big word probably, but contrivance is this idea that, I know someone in particular that there might be an event happening and they pre-plan everything in the event, who they want to sit next to, what conversations they want to have, what they're going to talk about. You know what I mean?
That's exhausting. I'm so tired.
Oh, it's so exhausting. Yeah. And being with that person is exhausting because when life starts to break out and go in a different direction, that's a problem for them.
Yeah.
Right? They don't like that. So they try and bring it back on So to contrive is to have a predetermined way that you want things to work, and to take that predetermined agenda into a situation which may or may not be amendable or open to that particular schedule of how you want things to operate. So think about it in regards to, you might have a fight with someone, right? Very naturally. So you've had this disagreement with someone and you're both a bit raw. And then so while they're away, you sit here and you go, well, this is what I'm going to say. You know, next time I meet,
it's going to be this,
exactly.
ready to go. Yeah.
Exactly. Do you know what I mean? And then you see them the next time, and all of a sudden, everything you contrived to say, you go, it's just not appropriate. And if you went ahead with it, you'd actually do more damage.
Yeah.
You know, you might meet the person, and there's something inside of you, maybe in your heart just says, you just need to give them a hug and tell them that you love them.
Yeah.
You don't need to go here again today. You know, just affirm the relationship and be together. And then maybe later on you can talk about that stuff, but not today, right? That might be the inner working, right? But if you come with your contrivance, you suppress what's needed in the moment and inflict that situation with what you've contrived, with what you've planned to bring, right? Now, I mean, everyone says, well, all our lovely people go, I would never do that. But it's really hard not to do that because, we get in our heads. We tell ourselves where contrivance comes out of the story. Contrivance is we've told ourselves a story, and the story and the contrived plan that we create off the back of the story is because we're not present in the moment. We actually don't turn up for the moment. We turn up for the plan that we have about what the moment's going to be. Right? And I think for many of us who create stories, which is what the mind really does, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. I mean, this feeds back into striving and performing because you're going into something with an agenda every time.
Yeah.
And that's,
well said. Really simply said, it's going into situations with a predetermined agenda and then demanding or then contorting the situation to achieve that agenda. So you're actually manipulating what's going on. And it's exhausting, and it's a strategy that doesn't work. Imagine going into a room where 5 other people are completely contrived.
Well, I think we do.
Yeah.
I think this happens all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, why? I ask why. Why do people do this? And I can probably warrant a guess, but I'm interested to hear why.
I think we do it because I think when we're disconnected from who we are, there's no ground of being to stand on. When we're disconnected from our heart, then we're probably in one of those other energies. We're in our emotional energy, physical energy, or egoic energy. Do you know what I mean? So we're trying to meet our needs. We're trying to make sense of the situation, and we're emotionally trying to stay regulated, or we're emotionally trying to control the situation. So, I think in reality, what happens to us is that those other energies start to become really loud, and all of a sudden, it's like it's a narrative war. It's a war of ideas or thoughts, or you did this, and then you come back with something about what I did, and it's all very clever and it's all very thought through. But the reality is, it's not connective. Two souls aren't actually connecting. It is actually a war of narratives, or I'm trying to meet my needs and assert myself, and you're trying to meet your needs and assert yours. So there's no middle ground to meet on, or I become emotionally dysregulated, and then you react to my emotional dysregulation. And so when those other energies, and then not to mention your physical energy where someone can, fold their arms or shut down or verbally basically tell you to piss off or whatever it is,
Yeah.
Someone's giving you that big F off, physically. So when those energies are out of control and you're not actually turning up in your heart and being present for what is, not what's contrived, but what actually is, then I think that's the challenge, right? That's the problem.
It's funny too, like when you're being contrived, you it's kind of like a weird form of thievery or robbery, really. You're robbing yourself from the, I don't know, the genuineness of that situation, and you're robbing the situation in general for flowing in the way that it could, or unfolding in the way that it can unfold.
Yeah.
So realistically, leaning into potential uncertainty around how an interaction is going to occur or how something is going to unfold
it was really interesting.
Really important.
Yeah, completely. So an example of this for me as a young man, you know, I used to listen to certain speakers who would speak about different, philosophic kind of characters who were incredibly articulate about philosophy and history and psychology and theology and all that. And I'd listen to them speak, and they were charismatic, and they were funny, and they were everything. Like, you know, and you just almost fell in love with them, not falling in love with them, but you loved their energy, you loved the way what they spoke about, completely engaging. And then after, when it was all wrapping up and they were leaving, or, you know, the function was over, you go up to and say, "Hi, how are you? I'm so-and-so," whatever it was. And you would just find this vacuous human that didn't give a shit.
No, really?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, more than a million times.
Yeah.
Generally, like, and there was that word ephemeral, which was kind of, you know, the ephemera is that sort of plant from where we get ephedrine. And, you know, if you get the ephemera at just the right moment, the hit of ephedrine you get is incredibly potent. But if you get it a day too late or a day too early, there's no potency in it whatsoever. So they introduced this word called ephemeral, which meant that, like, if someone was very ephemeral, if you got them in their moment, they were incredible. And if you didn't get them in the moment, you didn't really get it. You didn't get anything, right?
Yeah.
And it made me realize that the person up the front was a contrivance.
Yeah.
It was a role. It was a performance, and the performance was impressive, right? Mm-hmm. But after they stepped out of the performance and back into just being
present,
Joe Normal, and trying to be present, they couldn't be present.
Yeah.
You know, they could do the contrived person, but they couldn't do the natural, organic, "Hey, dude, how you doing?"
Mm-mm.
You know, that for me was a good example, you know. And I think, you know, there's that beautiful Buddhist story. I don't know if you remember this Buddhist story, beautiful Buddhist story about this monk who was, you know, widely revered as being, you know, the most enlightened and awakened monk. And one day he was asked to marry a royal couple, right? And it was a big, big event. And as a royal, you know, it's kind of like this guy has reached the epitome of Buddhist influence in his region, and now he's marrying royalty, and, you know, he's such a revered holy man. And as the couple, as he was doing the ceremony with the couple, he noticed himself getting nervous, right? And so the ceremony ended, and then the monk disappeared for years. And everyone, where did he go? Anyway, he turned up years later, and someone said to him, it's like, "What'd you do? Where'd you go?" Mm-mm. And he said, "I observed in me a nervousness when I was marrying the royal couple, and I realized that I was still attached. I hadn't emptied myself." Mm-hmm. So what he's essentially saying is, I observed that I was nervous about whether I was playing the role of the holy monk man adequately. Mm-hmm. And he realized that if that was something that he was putting on and that he had to be nervous about because it really wasn't him, then he needed to go away. Yeah. And he needed to step out of that contrived role of being the most holy monk, you know, the most unattached, the most realized guy. And he needed to step out of that and go, "No, I can't do that as a contrived role. I have to do that I'm going to do that on my own." Mm-hmm. I don't know. Is that a good example?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
It's a random example. But
it's random, but I'm here for it.
Yeah.
So then, like, becoming less contrived in day-to-day life requires, I don't know, willingness to be present, the deep presence.
Yeah, showing up. Showing up. And it also, I think, is just letting the chips lie where they fall. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, just showing up in a T-shirt or like if I go and do a corporate event, then I basically I'm going to go in a pair of linen pants and a T-shirt with a bunch of beads on, because that's how I roll. That's how I roll 24/7.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I'm not going to go and put a suit on, or I'm not going to go and become something that I'm not. And maybe in certain places people go, I don't like that. You go, well, you don't like me then. That's fine. Or even in these podcasts, well, we're going to talk about what we like.
Yeah.
Because there's no point us talking about stuff that we're not passionate about, right? So I think in everything, it's kind of this commitment to not having a very tricky plan about how you're going to get a win or how you're going to get influence or how you're going to make it here, there. It's just showing up and being willing to let the chips fall where they may. If it goes great because people really like, oh, good. If you win approval, great. If you win disapproval, it's indifferent. It's indifferent.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. So I think presence.
Okay, I like it. Okay, third point is. Oh, I like the third point. Everyone started living as a role instead of a person.
Yeah.
And then the little blurb, Daoism critiqued rigid identities and social masks.
Yeah.
Way of the Heart addresses the modern version of this, performing a self that was never truly yours.
Yeah,
and I like this one because so much about modern day is, this kind of feeds into what we're talking about, being contrived, but it's so performative.
Completely.
And we're taught from a very, very young age to be performative.
Yeah.
And it's rewarded continually.
Yeah.
And so you finally get to the point where you go, this is not sustainable anymore, or you want to build an identity that is genuinely yours. And it becomes really difficult because, shit, I've been performing my whole life.
Yeah.
How do I stop doing that?
Yeah. Yeah. I know from the Daoist perspective that their weariness with that was that in the Chinese tribal war period of time, a lot of the people that became the early Daoist philosophers were part of the educated elite, right? And so when the kind of the dynasty had fallen apart, all these different states started to assert themselves. You know what I mean? And the educated elite inevitably were the bureaucrats in those states, so they were the head of like Lao Tzu was the head of a library, or they were the artists, which had a lot of influence because there's a affection for the arts, for poetry and writing and calligraphy, and from where we get out the martial arts as well, So these were genuinely people with like genuine weight and influence, and they were genuinely inserted into the high roles within society. And then what would happen is that their state would be overrun by another state, and then they would be thrown into exile, or it would all just, everything that they did would just be completely dismantled. And after a while, after 2 or 3 times of this happening, or having threats upon their life, or being banished because they were part of a state that no longer existed, or whatever it was, they just went, this is a nonsense. So it is that critical moment, it is that critical fracture that happens to some of us when we look at the conditions of the culture that we're in and we go, I don't even know why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Like, what is this game? So it's more than just the socialization that calls you into a role. It is that married to the fact that this system rewards that, but even in rewarding that, there's a complete futility to it. Like who cares?
Yeah.
Like, okay, yeah, I'm playing a role, right? Which is exactly what you said before. I'm playing a role in a pantomime that no one's turning up for, that's not changing anything. That has no, I mean, I know I felt that way when I was in my early life. It's like I was showing up and I was going through the motions and I was teaching and I was doing everything that I possibly could. And I remember in the car coming home one day and I said to Ange, after giving, this teaching to a group of people, And I remember saying to them, I said to Ange, so how did that go? And she just goes, it was fine. And I go, fine? I mean, like, what is it, a vanilla milkshake? Like, what do you mean fine? Like,
Yeah.
and she goes, it doesn't change anything.
Savage.
And I just went, oh, it was savage, and I was a little bit crushed by it, not that I'm a fragile man, but I was crushed by it. But I realized that in that, she was right.
Yeah.
This was a speech given, or this was a teaching given to people that didn't want to be taught.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to land. The whole environment was recalcitrant. It was stuck. It was what I call closed and sure. I was coming with alternate ideas that people didn't give a toss about. And so in the end, I just went, why am I doing this?
Mm-hmm.
The whole structure is bollocks. That was the Daoist structure on that point.
Mm-hmm.
We're in roles, we're doing stuff, and it has no consequence whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you realize that in your own life, that is a devastating, savage realization.
Well, yeah, especially because like you can become aware of that, but to some extent you still have to play a role, don't you? As in you can go to like, I'm playing the role of like a good wife or a good mum or a good employee, and does it really matter? How do you not become nihilistic when you look at it like that?
Yeah, because I think what you can do is I don't think the problem is necessarily the roles. It's the it's the false belief that actually that the system around that actually serves anything. You know what I mean? So like, and it's this idea too that the role that you're playing becomes an identity. It's a permanent identity. See, no sooner do you become a parent, right? An adult, a parent, that as your kids get older, you have to stop being a parent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you got to let go of that.
Yeah.
That was a role that I played while my kids were X to X. But by the time my kids became young adults, they don't want a dad. They don't want a daddy. They don't even want a dad. They want a bellow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So all of those roles that you play, if you invest identity in them, and if you believe the structures that support them, you are headed for a nihilistic deconstruct, because those things are so temporal.
Mm.
And I think that was part of the deconstruct for the Daoists, is that they looked at it and went, oh, wow, we need something more real. So they went off into the mountains and they became farmers and they became poets and they became, they made wine.
Right.
You know what I mean? They started monasteries, they started schools, they started injecting themselves into local villages. They got much more grounded in terms of what they were doing. Grounding.
Yeah, because I was going to ask for the everyday Joe who can't quit life and go up into a monastery and make wine and everything. What's the balance there? And
well, just groundedness. You know what I mean? Just finding places where you just come. You just come back to earth. You just come back and be real.
Yeah, and I think also there's something to be said about finding, and this kind of goes into the 6 heart questions, but finding places and people that affirm the ground of your being. Like there's something so nourishing in being able to hang out with people who fundamentally get you at a core level.
Yeah, and don't believe the roles that you might have to play elsewhere.
Yeah. Right? Or doing something that, I don't know, having a hobby that allows you to just completely embody the essence of who you are. And it looks different. I think the fact that it looks different for everyone is also really beautiful as well, because then that's part of your individuality that you get claim over.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah. Completely.
Yeah.
I mean, I have 2 guys, echoing that point. I have 2 guys in my life that are, by all standards, ridiculously successful, big public profiles, and when people find out that I know these guys, they say, "Oh, can you give me an introduction?" I universally say, "No, I absolutely cannot." Because what people don't understand is that I know these two individuals, and I do see their success, but I don't relate to them through that. To me, they're just two of my closest friends. You know what I mean? So the role that they play when they put on their chairman hat, or when they put on their, celebrity hat, and another one who puts on his law hat, the role, the gown and the wig and all that sort of stuff, and the public performances, and the highfalutin meetings, and the flying here, there, and everywhere. When I'm hanging out with them, it's just three brothers. It's just the three boys. It's none of that other stuff. And I think if we have people like that, then they do honor who you are. They do lessen the fracture between being a real person and being this archetype, which isn't really real at all.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I love that. It's also, not over-identifying with that mask.
Yeah, and having people in your world that go, okay, yeah, he's doing that thing. Yeah, cool. Can you just come back here and be?
Yeah.
I don't really,
Yeah. Love it. I love it. Cool. Okay, number 4.
Yeah, we're marching through these.
We are. Number 4. And I feel like I want you to deconstruct this one almost from the outset. But inner fragmentation became the norm. Daoists saw minds, emotions, and bodies moving in different directions. Way of the Heart teaches the heart as the conductor that reunifies the inner life. But let me just repeat the actual.
Yeah.
Inner fragmentation became the norm.
Yep. I don't think that could be more true than today. Like when we let one of those other energies, whether it's emotions, whether it's physicality, emotion, mind, or ego rule, then inevitably they are not sympathetic to one another. And they're loud. I think heart energy is the one energy that synthesizes the rest. It's the conductor that taps the baton on the lectern and says, hey, you're playing too loudly, back it down. Like the image of the conductor is a beautiful one, because the conductor is there to regulate. The conductor doesn't make any noise. It just regulates the noise that other people are making, and it makes it all harmonize, and it brings it in on time, and it makes it a synthesis. The word symphonos, the sound of oneness, from sum being one, the sum of, singularity, and phonos, sound of. So sound of oneness is actually what a symphony is, the word that we get symphony from the Greek. So, the idea that our heart plays the role of conductor of the symphony of energies. As human beings, we have this sort of, these 5 energies, probably more, that surge through us, but 5 that we identify in way of the heart. And the heart conducting those. And when the heart doesn't conduct those, we get into the one of the other 4, and it inevitably fractures the others. I mean, all of us will know of situations where we got so frustrated or so fatigued or so angry at a situation that we blurted something out that we didn't mean, or we said something that we shouldn't have said, or our body language was our body language gave us away because we weren't present for the moment, and we were sending, we were casting daggers with the way we looked, and and everyone heard the nice words, but they picked up, oh, she's really pissed off, like this thing's broken, or goodbye, I love you, but so that, it's like, oh, I'm not really sure you do at the moment.
And to clarify too, because we talk about it in our course, but I don't think that we've mentioned it explicitly yet on the podcast, the 5 energies. You've got head energy, egoic energy, emotional energy, physical energy, and heart energy.
Yeah.
And that, the first 4 are primarily externally referenced,
completely,
and externally dependent, and the heart energy is internally referenced, and it's what we're always trying to return to. So I just wanted to call that out specifically. It is in our course, but for reference.
It's a core idea in Way of the Heart that we have 4 externally focused energies, physical, emotional, mental, and ego, and we have one internally, heart energy, which is referencing essence.
So to clarify, are we saying that inner fragmentation is when those energies are out of balance?
I think when we say we get fragmented as a soul, as a living soul, because our soul is made up of all those energies, we get discombobulated as a soul when our heart energy is being ignored and we're just firing off on all those other energies. Right?
And this is where we see this, I think, manifest in a whole bunch of different ways, right? We see, say, if someone's, relying too heavily on the physical energy, you might see dependence on substances, or you might see escapism through, indulging in.
Well, I knew one guy that I would go and travel 3 or 4 hours to be with him, and we were going to do 3 or 4 days of work together, but he would have to finish and go and run 20 Ks.
Yeah. Wow.
Right. And I would say to him, dude, that's going to take a long time. Number one, I didn't come down here to sit in your lounge room while you go for a 10K or a 20K run.
Yeah.
And two, you're adrenal depleted.
Yeah.
You're an adrenal junkie.
Yeah.
Because what he would do is he would push his body so hard to beat a particular time for 10Ks or 20Ks. He would push his body so hard that you knew that he was getting a release of endorphins, adrenaline, all that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? So he was completely physically addicted to that hit, to that rhythm, to pushing his body that hard. And so even to the point where he would come to a hill and his body would say, I can't do it. And he loved strong-arming his body and making it do it.
Right. And that's fragmentation.
That's physical energy taken to the extreme, Some would argue that's mental energy, the power of my mind over my body. It's I don't really know what it is. I just know that it's not normal. Do you know what I mean? It's not natural. It's absolutely physically identified.
But what if that's his essence that really what if that's his essence that really loves running, and that's just him expressing who he is?
I would say, great, as long as it's not the fact that as long as there's some evidence that his essence can show up in other ways as well.
Yeah.
I have no problem about people being elite sportsmen, but so much of the kind of so much of the body sculpturing that we do, and the judgments that we have around body sculpturing, you just go, it's just a massive over-identification with physicality. And that Western society is completely identified with looks, and people need to look a specific way and sound a specific way, and it's massively over-identified.
I think that this one about the inner fragmentation is kind of hard to get my head around, especially if we're kind of tying it to the 5 energies being out of alignment, or one being more dominant than the other. Only because I think I have a pre-existing idea that fragmentation is, I don't know, being pulled in a bunch of different directions. And it kind of touches on the stuff that we were previously talking about, putting on masks or performing or striving, so it's interesting for me to think of fragmentation as you're just not being grounded in your heart energy.
Yeah, I think so. But also fragmentation just, it's parts of a whole existing in isolation from one another. So it's the person whose life is driven by emotions, but there's no reason that kicks in. So they're always reactive. They're always triggered. They're always, just got to watch out when you're around, Edna. She's, poor old Edna.
Poor Edna.
She's so dysregulated, and her dysregulation emotionally just spills out into every area of a relationship. So people don't want to go and hang out with her. They don't want to have coffee with Edna because they know there's a really good chance she's going to rip them a new one. You know what I mean? Or someone who is so in their ego that you go around to their place and you're making a cup of tea from them and they go, oh, I've got a better teapot than that. And you go dude, give us a break.
Chill out,
yeah.
And fragmentation isn't brokenness, though. They're two different.
It's just an overemphasis of a part rather than a synthesis of a whole.
Got it.
Right? It's the trumpet in the orchestra playing so loud that you go, dude, can the brass section just? You guys are great, but we got some timpanies over here, like we got some chimes over here that we can't even hear. This is the dance of the fairies, and you guys are blasting it out like it's the like it's the flight of the freaking bumblebee. Like, slow down, dude. Quiet. We're trying to do the fairy bit now. Like it's when one energy is just completely out of control, and it fragments and it just it destroys the symphonos.
Of all those things.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And the heart doesn't do that.
It's landed for me,
because the heart is going, hey, down, stop, calm the farm.
Yeah.
You're trying to do that as a parent when you got 3 kids.
Yeah.
You're trying to just go, one kid's upset, one kid's hungry, one kid's blissfully reading their book, and then their sibling comes along and, smudges their book with a banana and it ruined my book. It's like, and as a parent, you just go, hey, whoa. I'll clean up the banana, take your banana outside. You're playing that regulatory role.
Yeah. I
to
like
keep
that.
the thing together.
Yeah, I'm always going to think of it that way now.
Oh, okay.
The heart is just the parent to the
yeah,
children.
It's running around just going, hey.
Yeah.
So
I think to land this for people who are listening, especially people who aren't super familiar with the energies, a way to not solve fragmentation, but a way to kind of balance that symphony is returning to heart energy.
Yeah,
and that
sure.
looks like
it looks quiet. The tap of the baton on the lectern or whatever it is just quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Your heart will be speaking softly.
And for me, like, I interpret that on a practical level as, at least in my life, when I'm too heavily in one energy, as it happens, the way that I return to my heart or my essence is through being alone. So I'll get to the point where, okay, I need to go away now. Like, I need to go on a walk, or I need to sit with a book, or often for me, it's I need to get up at midnight or 1 o'clock or whatever it is, and I need to go out under the sky and just sit there in the moon for a bit.
Well, whatever it is that gets you there, but it's aligning yourself to the still small voice.
Yeah.
It's aligning yourself to that part of you that is grounded, and it's letting go of the need. It's bringing the other expressions into some kind of coherence and into a wholeness.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah.
All right, let's do one more pain point for this episode.
We're going to give you 5 because
for this episode, 5 for this, 5 for the next.
Slap you with 10 right now.
Settle in for a 10-hour lecture.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want, let us know. Number 5. Ooh, we've kind of
covered it.
We have, yeah. This one is people disconnected from the natural world. Daoism warned that losing contact with nature leads to anxiety and distortion. Way of the heart restores the inner ecology that mirrors the rhythm of the outer world.
Yeah.
So people disconnected from the natural world.
Yeah, this is to see yourself as a creature in a creaturely space, and from sort of industrialization onwards. I know I keep referring to this, but I think that we are not computers. We're not machines.
Yeah.
And because we do have an industrialized and a digitalized world where we transact so much life on human constructs, we just forget that all of that is encased in the natural world, and that we're encased in the natural world, and that we have, the whole ocean responds to the pull of the moon. There's gravitational force field around the whole world. There's magnetic poles that influence everything. Like, we're still on the planet. We didn't come from somewhere else. Whole ecosystems, when it's super hot, trees do certain things with their leaves. Whole forests do things. Like there's stories about how do trees cope with infestations or plagues of insects, they give off a scent that travels in the air, and that trees further down the line pick up the scent that lands on their leaf, and then they know to elicit a certain amount of toxicity into their leaves. So when the bugs come, the bugs bite into the leaf, and you know, I don't know if it kills them, but they don't like the taste of it, so they leave the trees alone. Like, you know, they talk about the web. You know, that you see we see the trees on the top, but the web underneath.
It's like the mycelial network, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that, I mean, humans we're kind of like a giant walking fungus.
Yeah.
Like we have a whole gut microbiome that most of the time we're completely out of
ignorant
touch
of. Yeah. If you could look at us under a petri jar, you'd be horrified, right? You know?
Yeah.
I mean, this is where we need to get Ted to talk to us about this sort of stuff.
Every time Ted talks about it.
She's a scientist and a good one at that. So, so we're all part of this, you know, but we live like we're not. When we're hot, we turn the air conditioning on. When we're cold, we turn the heater on. When it's raining, we come inside. You know, we have so quarantined ourselves from the natural world, and so often we access the natural world to consume it rather than to participate with it, and that's to our great detriment. You know, that's why I've loved surfing my whole life, because it's elemental. What are you doing as a surfer? You're just riding an energetic force. Yet, I mean, when you hop up on a board on a wave, you're not doing anything. I mean, you might want to do a few turns if you're cool or whatever it is. You know, I'm no Kelly Slater or, you know, John Florence, but when you're surfing, essentially you're just harnessing an energy and letting that energy move you along a wave, right? I mean, that's why I love that sport, because it was so grounding back in nature. You know, it was so elemental. And I think when we lose that, we just develop such artificial lives.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think that has a genuine cost to us. And Way of the Heart deals with that, because many of our embodied activities are about getting you back to you know, connect with the very primal element of being a part of, not connect with nature, but get back to the primal acknowledgement that you are part of nature.
Yeah.
You know?
It is you. You are it.
You are it. Yeah.
So go touch some grass.
Yeah. All right, folks, that's 5 of the ways that 5 of the pain points that we have. That, as I said before, they're stimulated, or they arise in my consciousness through the contribution of early Chinese wisdom literature, specifically the Daoist. You know, it was never a Daoist religion, the Daoist philosophy, and they may be a little bit different than some of the other pain points that people talk about. But we will launch into 5 more of them in our next episode. I hope you enjoyed this one. Talk soon.
See you next time. Thank you for listening to Heart Riffing. If today's conversation resonated, you can find more of our work, including courses, mentoring, and workshops, at www.wayoftheheart.com.au or on our Instagram, Way of the Heart Official. We'd love to hear your thoughts, reflections, or questions, so please always feel free to message or comment. We look forward to seeing you next time.